"It's been a pleasure, Madam President," Alexandra said as she proffered her hand. "Please, call me Amelia. Hell, I'd settle for General," Amelia said, as she took the Dungeon Corps' hand and stepped down onto the ground. "No one has elected me." "I'm sure they will, once you give them a chance." "Ah, as if I'd let them. Once I'm done freeing the Republic, I'm retiring." Yeah, George Washington thought the same thing. Didn't end up quite that way, thought Alexandra, though of course she didn't voice it. "But in the meantime, it's a valuable title for public relations." "Yeah, I suppose so. It evokes concepts that haven't been around in a long time in my people." Alexandra nodded. The Republic's Senate, effectively its entire legislative branch, had completely neutered and decapitated the judiciary and especially the executive branches. The last time the Republic had a president that had more power than a doormat was when it was still trying to peacefully absorb its neighbors and happily trying to prop up Tark with humanitarian aid. Long enough that the office of the president had more or less faded into half-legend, which would give Amelia some gravitas, regardless of her electoral status. "Well, let's hope it works. I mean, no offense, but you'll need all the help you can get." "Indeed. Which is why I'm sure you won't be surprised that I already have some proposals for commercial transactions with you, which you no doubt anticipated." Alexandra smiled innocently. "Did I?" "Yes. It's why you neither asked for the teleporter nor the sand kraken repellent during the peace negotiations. You're planning to extort them out in exchange for military equipment." "I prefer the term fair trade, but yes." "It would also just so happen to keep any hint of the transaction and your ownership of those devices out of the treaty and its negotiations, which were going to be watched by absolutely everyone who's anyone on the continent. You know, you are disturbingly good at this for a military officer." "So are you." Something must have shown on Alexandra's face because Amelia smiled. "You can't hide behind the Baroness anymore. You're in command of your own army, your own fleet. You are a general, whether you wished it known or not." Alexandra idly wondered if the general would ever know how incredibly close to having an extremely messy and highly lethal accident she just came. Then she decided that it would probably be best if the answer was no. "Quite. But you'd be amazed at the level of mental gymnastics people will do to try and keep a dungeon out of the equation, at least in their mind." "No one wishes for a repeat of the Dungeon Wars." "United Dungeon Wars." "Not united for much longer." They exchanged meaningful looks. Several members of the UDC had sent an ultimatum to the Republic once Alexandra had resurrected a couple of commandos and provided the intact influence disruptors, all verified by the local WMC officials. Unfortunately for the UDC, instead of going with the fait accompli, it had tried to rein in its own members. It was currently going poorly. The UDC was on the verge of breaking apart into 1,000 pieces, if not outright civil war, and a fair few of the rebel dungeons were using her as a figurehead. Crap, some of them seemingly wanted her to genuinely be their leader. After the cold shoulder the organization had given her, it was odd to be treated like the Messiah. Or evil incarnate, depending on who you asked. She'd gotten death threats and what bordered on marriage proposals, had the senders been human or equivalent. Actually, she didn't know if Dungeon Corps had the equivalent of a sex drive, though they did seem to have romantic involvements, if rarely. That would explain why Etheria nearly had a heart attack when she'd learned her daughter had a child with her assigned Dungeon Corps. Perhaps they won't be united Dungeon Wars for much longer, but perhaps they will again. The general slowly nodded, and Alexandra smiled.